Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to talk about an old school role-playing game supplement. This is from the Cyberpunk 2020 game. It is called Night's Edge. It is an alternative history sourcebook for Cyberpunk. Essentially, this supplement presents to you the rules that you will need to run vampires and werewolves in a cyberpunk setting. Now, when this was originally released, I was actually playing Cyberpunk back then, but I never saw this supplement, ever. In fact, I don't think I was actually exposed to it until the gentleman mentioned it in a video at one point, or it might even been a comment in a discussion. So I finally got a chance to read it, and when I had been playing, even though I hadn't been aware of this, and I hadn't been aware of it because if my gaming store didn't carry it, I didn't know it existed. This is back before I had an internet connection. I had actually been working on the idea of coming up with rules for poser gangs based around vampires and werewolves. People that had used either full cyborg conversions, or they had done a lot of gene modding of their systems to appear to be vampire-like or like a werewolf or some other kind of were, like bear, tiger, what have you. And then I was going to establish those into the game and then throw a real supernatural vampire or werewolf into the mix. Though it would have been like a one-off kind of thing. I hadn't really considered coming up with overall rules for vampires or werewolves as either NPCs on a regular basis or as player characters. So I'm going to use the table of contents here as a reference for myself. It comes up with the first chapter known as Hunting the Night. It deals with the terminology, the disease that creates vampires, how it's done, and essentially to become a full-fledged vampire, you have to have a certain percentage of your blood replaced by vampiric blood, and then you begin to become a vampire. And they have it broken down into particular age brackets, so that the youngest ones are called fledglings, and you keep going up from there. And depending on the age bracket, it determines how often you have to feed. A new vampire has to feed once every 72 hours, and you need to consume 6 points of body of blood. So if you're feeding off of a human who had 8 points of body, you would not kill them, but you'd make them very, very sick. But if a person has only 6, you would kill them. You reach a state of euphoria if you, in fact, kill someone while feeding. Kind of interesting. And as you age, you need to eat less often. The really old ones, like Dracula and Lord Kronos, a narrator in the supplement, excuse me, kind of niche, he only has to eat like once every 5 or 20 years. I thought that was kind of cool. As you age, you become more and more, or less and less organic, and you need less and less food. But the first chapter really covers all about how to hunt vampires. So for the mortals of the world who want to hunt what they consider to be beasts. And this could definitely be one model of campaign. You're playing humans, standard cyberpunk characters with or without cybernetics, who hunt vampires. This is like the movie Vampire, which was very bad, or the novel it was based on, Vampires, which is very, very good. Highly recommended. The movie's bad. Novel, good. Then we have the Children of the Night, which actually covers the creation of vampires, their appearance, the covens that they create for each other, how drugs and radiation and poisons affect them, how often they have to feed, healing, because as they age, as they become more powerful, they get healed faster and faster. They get very good at that. Going into hibernation, either involuntarily or because there is no food available. Quirks, losing your senses, essentially, as far as sanity goes, because you become less and less empathetic as time goes by, kind of like cyberpsychosis. Sunburn, things like what happens if you get exposed to the sun, how do you heal it, things like that. Then they talk about We Walk the Night, which is like, for example, vampires make a lot of money. They live a long time, they accumulate a lot of wealth, and that's reflected in this supplement. How about hunting, reactions of general people, sanity and suicide amongst vampires, because frankly, you get all old and you've been around for a long time, you've watched friends and family die, that can really mess with your head. How to deal with vampire hunters, the people I mentioned earlier. Then there's an entire chapter which is incredibly detailed about psionic powers, because all vampires have a psionic skill. And it's a new stat, psionic skill, so that they have. Though they do suggest that if you don't want to use the psionic stat, you don't want to have a fully separate system, you can use the luck skill, the luck stat for that. I could see how that would, basically be saying is that people are lucky because they are partly psionic kind of thing. And I don't know if there are psionic rules anywhere else in the game of Cyberpunk. I don't remember ever encountering them, but I could be wrong. But these are incredibly detailed. You could easily lift these out of here and use them completely separate. For example, the movie Push, you could use these to emulate the movie Push easily. I was quite impressed by them. I freely admit I am very rusty with them as far as the mechanics of Cyberpunk 2020 are concerned, so I'm not really sure if how well they balance out. But it looked good to me on a read through, so that was kind of nice. And there are lots of powers to play with in here, so you're not going to have a problem finding something that really fits what you want a character to play, to have. Then they have Gateway into the Night, which is about how to create your own vampire character, and some sample characters to go by. Then they talk about a chapter called Lunacy, which is about lycanthropes and werewolves, and how they fit into the whole thing, and how they become them, and how they, how they're affected by the moon and things like that. I was less impressed by this chapter, which is kind of a bummer because it didn't go into quite as much detail. The supplement's mostly about vampires, I understand that. Because I'm really a big fan of lycanthropes, particularly werebears. So I think I would have liked to have seen a little more meat in this chapter. There may be other supplements from this company, I'm not sure. I haven't looked at all of the options available yet. And they talk about sample transformations, how to help the werewolves live, hereditary werewolves, the lunar cycles, things like that. And they talk about Journey into the Night, which is living forever, which is like overexposure, and like a short adventure called Hunting Season, and there's a very thorough index. Now, there's a television show out there on cable right now called True Blood. I've never watched it, but I am familiar with it from people who online who have. They talk about it on YouTube. And it's built around the concept that researchers come up with artificial blood, which is then allows vampires to come out of the woodwork because now they don't need to hunt people. Now this would be perfect for a campaign of vampires. You could even have like Lord Kronos, the oldest vampire in the world who's very wealthy, having funded the research to create this. And then he releases it to the world so that everybody can benefit from it, but mostly so that now his children, the people who he calls his brother and sister, can come out of the darkness and be in the light. How does this affect vampire hunters? How does this affect the general public to suddenly realize there are like almost 1 million vampires in the world? Do the werewolves come out as well, or do they stay in the shadows? Are there other things that live in the shadows besides werewolves and vampires? A perfect idea. You could just have a straight-out Cyberpunk campaign. Start a mystery with them finding out about the True Blood they think it's just espionage. Someone trying to steal this to corner the market or something, and they find out that it's being used by real live vampires. Really mess with your players' heads. This is a good supplement. Night's Edge is definitely well worth a read if you get a copy. I enjoyed it. I think it's a good addition to the game. And I'm just kind of sad I missed out when it was more pertinent to me.